Forget deplatforming. What about platforming? What about the very fact that you have a giant platform?
I want to understand what's the view of somebody like you, internet entrepreneur, effectively, right, on the issues of deplatforming, Section 230, publishing versus platform concepts for Facebook and Twitter, for example.
So my views on these things are kind of funny because I look at upstream problems one step back. Like, how did we get to this situation? Just like when we were talking about net neutrality, Title 1 or Title 2. That's already a problem. Why are you in the situation where the telecommunications—
Can you remind the listeners, please, about neutrality and Title 1 and Title 2 and the difference, but literally 30
Net
seconds.
neutrality was about how can we treat the pricing model that the signals will come through the internet service providers. Can the internet service providers charge both sides, or can they just charge one side? And the thing is, it's the same question of, are you a utility? Should we force you into this economic model or that economic model? But few people ask the question of, why are they so big in the first place? Why are we supposed to use the government to choose what, or force them to do? So similarly here, I have a very interesting sort of, I look at it and I say, forget deplatforming. What about platforming? What about the very fact that you have a giant platform? On a smaller level, I'm coming on this show, right? And then you own the means of distribution, not just the means of producing the show, but distributing the show. And you can use that to an advantage. But what if you take that to an absurd level? What if the public discourse is being carried on private platforms, right? Then you have a conflict of interest. And even the most staunch, sometimes like Republicans in the United States who have heard the Obama administration say, you didn't build it, everybody helped you with the
Somebody somewhere gave you a hand, right? Argument, yes.
Education of your employees. They say, no, we built it hand. They say, no, I very people might also say the government should not even tax me at all. I built it, it's mine. But here's the thing. Mark Zuckerberg built Facebook and it's his. Jeff Bezos built Amazon is to put in the original capital, right? At some point, though, they rightly understand that they can get deplatformed from these very important platforms. But one principle is that Mark Zuckerberg owns it and he could do whatever he wants, even unilaterally. He can kick you off just because he doesn't like your nose. On the other hand, there is some call for government intervention to make sure you're not getting deplatformed. And they want to import the free speech, the First Amendment, into private platforms, the same way they did this with cities. And I think it was the 17th Amendment, they incorporate the Bill of Rights into cities and states. And now they're looking to incorporate something as a publisher or regulate things as, as a platform. But the thing is, I think that's beside the point. Why are they so big? Why is Facebook? I remember in 2019, one side of Congress was excoriating Mark Zuckerberg, how he's allowing fake ads on Facebook, and they're false. The next year, he was actually chewed out for, why are you taking down certain posts and communications? If you're so big, you can't please both the German regulators and the US regulators and the Canadian. Even the same country sometimes has different people with totally different ideas. In my opinion, they're too big, and we should have open source alternatives to run our own social networks and decide in our own communities what a specific country is called on a map, what flag it should have, etc., and not bother anybody else about one-size-fits-all solutions. So that would be my approach.
The thing is that you were breaking, and perhaps you were breaking at the most important points, just for us to understand your position on deplatforming. Do you support a possibility of the large internet providers like Twitter and Facebook to deplatform opinions they do not like? Very simple question, yes or no? And then you can actually elaborate maybe for 30 seconds why.
For me, I do support them deplatforming because they're private companies. I would rather solve the problem of why these private companies get so big and their platforms are so big and there is no alternative to them the way that we have Linux or Wikipedia, or I should say WordPress. You see, WordPress powers 40% of all websites in the world. Why don't we have something like that for what Facebook does or LinkedIn does? Somebody had to build it. I actually, it's self-serving to say, but my company actually builds it. And we seek to become the WordPress of social networking. Qbix is building it out of essentially cubes, like construction kit for your site. So that's basically.
I'm sure our audience, if they're interested, they will have a look. But what I'm more interested in now, moving perhaps the relationship between the governments around the world and these feudal lords of the internet, so to speak. And you started to talk about Australia. Why is their example so interesting to you?
To me, these arrangements are beside the point. They can make whatever arrangements they want. They're private organizations. They can deplatform, they can charge one another, they can refuse to carry the other person's content. To me, the problem is not that, it's the lack of a robust, non-profit driven sector of the internet economy, the same way we have for Web 1.0. We don't have Linux for Web 2.0. We don't have WordPress for Web 2.0. And if you look at Web 3.0, we do. We have Ethereum, we have Bitcoin, they're permissionless. No one owns the Bitcoin network. The nature of the projects that are coming out of the cryptocurrency space, it's much more distributist. And I should say distributism is neither socialism nor capitalism. It's the idea that the means of production should be distributed to everyone as widely as possible. Everyone should have a personal computer, everyone should have a blog, and everyone should have an Ethereum address and the ability to deploy a smart contract. When that happens, the world wealth explodes with new ideas and new possibilities. And private property is good on a local level, but when you apply the principles of a local level to a giant platform, you start to get into massive issues, because at the end of the day, property is the monopoly right to exclude others from using your resource. So my view is, yeah, these things are just too big. It's not about deplatforming, it's about how did they get too big, because there's no open source alternatives to them.